6 months earlier in Liberia, 2 men dug up a burial site and bagged up a body from an Ebola gravesite. Back to the present, Jack and James land in Turkey greeted by Lance, who will get them access to the sex trafficking site. Tony greets them with tea, but Jack goes straight to the point. Luckily, Tony is in it for the money and they bargain for the information. They agree on the price and Tony drives them to the location. The smugglers arrive at a checkpoint and they let everyone out to use the washroom before heading out again. Suddenly, Yazid shows up at the checkpoint and starts looking for them in the washroom. He finds the daughters, but Hanan hits him with a rock and he falls in the pond of pee and poop. Then they run away, and once they are far enough, they walk to the coast direction. During the drive, Tony gets a call and he informs them an incident happened in one of the checkpoints with a woman they may be looking for. When they arrive to the checkpoint, Tony asks about Hanan and they find out they left after escaping Yazid. Yazid heads to the coast while Tony takes a shortcut to the coast. A gate was blocking the shortcut, so Tony bargains with the guards. The guards were asking for too much, so Tony killed them. Jack starts beating Tony after he was shit-talking about Hanan, so James had to stop the fight and order them around. Kathy, on the other hand, is swamped with the Ebola case because EVD-27 should have been eradicated and emails the higher-ups about it. Later, Dr. Sheen tells Kathy how the man got Ebola and how the 2 Easter men paid him for it. After the call, Kathy emails the higher-ups to immediately review the findings. Hanan and the kids arrive at the coast and they sneak into the line to board the raft. Yazid is there on the lookout and spots them. Before taking action, he asks for Suleiman's orders. Jack and the others arrive to look for Hanan, but Yazid gets some men to prevent Hanan from getting onto the raft. The men separate Hanan and her children and brought Hanan to Yazid. Jack sees the commotion and they rush over to help her. Yazid uses Hanan as a hostage while Tony tries to calm everyone down. Tony makes a deal with the leader, but they only get Hanan and not her daughters. Jack doesn't like the deal, but James takes it. When they take the kids away, Yazid gives them Hanan and James shoots Yazid right in the head. Then they have another standoff while Tony tries to calm it down again. Jack goes to the family to bring them to a safe place, and when they are in the car, James gets Jack to pay Tony. Once they are on the army base, Jack wants to know what Suleiman is up to, but Hanan doesn't know. Jack brings up Samir and he will do whatever he can to reunite them, but she will need to give up Suleiman's location. She gives Jack the location and he promises to try his best to get Samir. Jack brings the information to James, but before he could tell him, James tells him what happened in Karachi and how Jack needs to compromise to get the mission done. Jack doesn't believe he needs to compromise, but that was James's mindset before he changed. Jack returns back to the office the next day after setting up Hanan's family in a safe house, and JSOC is working on a tactical assault plan to hit Suleiman's compound. The assault team does a practice run and Hanan helps prepare them. They have a meeting on using airstrikes to take out Suleiman, but Jack wants to use ground troops because they have many people spread out and they have no clue what their plans are. Bobby doesn't want a ground strike unless they know Suleiman is there. At the hospital, Kathy meets with Sergeant Grant, who wants to ask her some questions, and he has a car ready to pick her up. After the meeting, Tarek briefs them on what he found in Liberia with a photo of Ali and Suleiman together. James remembers CTC Africa was discussing an Ebola-infected corpse that went missing, and they went to that meeting. At the meeting, Kathy is briefing the army and they show up to join the meeting. Then they ask Kathy if Suleiman could weaponize Ebola. She thinks it's possible to weaponize Ebola, and that shocks everyone. After the meeting, Jack chases after Kathy because she feels betrayed due to Jack having to lie about his job. Back in Syria, Suleiman tells Samir Hanan has died because of the West, but his sisters will be returning. Suleiman promises to get revenge for Hanan and will strike them back harder. Suleiman messages Yazid to message him through the game, and Daniel is brought to Suleiman so he can give Daniel the things he asked for. Daniel passes the vitamins and antibiotics to everyone, including their previous captor. Abraham opens up a container and gears up to move the chemical products. He finds out one of them is leaking, so he leaves it behind. Maribel brings supplies to the safe house and gives Sarah a gaming device. Sarah uses the game to let Samir know Hanan is still alive. Suleiman walks in, so Samir acts asleep, and Suleiman checks the game to see the messages. James calls Jack to the CIA because they identified Suleiman in the compound and the hostages are there too. So President Pickett gets them to send in ground troops for the mission. Before they end the meeting, Jack wants to save Samir because Hanan gave the location up and President Pickett agreed to rescue Samir too. Everyone gathers at the CIA office to watch the mission commence. Mattis breaches the door and they start their assault mission. When they were clearing each room, no one was found, so they rescued the hostages. Mattis wanted to check a tunnel, but getting the hostages out was the priority. They collected all their things for evidence and left the compound. Close to the Turkish border was Suleiman's group with Canadian passports, and they get picked up by a driver. At the office, they find it weird Suleiman would give the hostages vitamins, and Tarek gives James shredded newspaper with Daniel and President Pickett together. Later, Jack invites Kathy out to give her an explanation to figure out their relationship. Kathy wants to continue their relationship, and when they were talking, Jack gets a call from James. Jack notices the hostages were the biological weapons after watching the news. So they move President Pickett and the congressman to the hospital to be quarantined. Jack has a dream when he was in the Marines and wakes up from it. He goes out to review notes and Kathy wonders if he's okay. Jack tells her about the helicopter crash. They were extracting a family from the Taliban and a kid begged to be brought along because he was an orphan. So Jack brought him on board, but the kid was a S-bomber, killing everyone but Jack. Kathy thanks Jack for sharing his story with her. Suleiman arrives at Leesburg, Virginia, and they are able to get through immigration. At the cargo factory, a man notices a bin open, so he checks it out. Inside, he finds a blue powder substance. Later, he goes to the hospital to get help but passes out before getting aid. Back at the office, they are briefed about a man suffering from radiation poisoning and the men who are behind it. They could potentially kill hundreds of thousands with what they got, so they start researching where they could cause the most damage. Jack thinks they aren't trying to kill a bunch of people because he thinks they have a multi-step plan. At the hospital, Kathy checks President Pickett's condition, and he seems to be doing fine. Abraham demonstrates a remote detonator and lets Suleiman test fire it. Suleiman promises to Samir once this is done, he will get the family back together. Later, Abraham goes to a busy pizzeria and leaves a bag behind. When he walks out, he detonates a bomb, causing an explosion. Jack and James go to the pizzeria, but Jack doesn't get it because he only killed 30 people compared to 300 people at the church. Then Jack notices they might be targeting the hospital where President Pickett is staying, so they go to the hospital. Suleiman gears up and they go around the hospital to a quiet place so they can remove the chemicals from the dead bodies to set up the bomb. They go to the air vents and set up the detonator. Once they finish, they leave the hospital. Jack informs them the pizzeria might be a distraction and they are probably targeting the hospital. Jack continues to contact Kathy, but he can't because they jammed the cell tower, so no one can remotely detonate a bomb, and then they split up to look for Suleiman. Kathy checks her phone and sees Jack's warnings. She talks to the higher-ups and doesn't like what she hears, so she pulls the fire alarm. Suleiman's group split off from each other because they spot guards looking for them. When James was walking up the stairs, he saw one of them and he chased after him. The men get into an elevator with Kathy and it closed on James. James meets them on a lower floor and he ends the guy. When Jack was searching, he heard gunshots, so he followed behind. Suleiman is outside trying to detonate the bomb, but nothing happens. Samir sees him and starts waving, but the police stop them. The guy tries to shoot the police, but they shot first, ending the guy. Samir stares at Suleiman, but he waves Samir off, but Jack sees Samir staring, so he goes that way. Jack shoots at Suleiman, but he was too far to hit him, and he chases after them to the subway. They go into the tunnels and they have a shootout. Luckily, Jack was able to find cover and shoot one of them. A train came, killing one of them, but that gave Suleiman time to run away, so Jack took a shortcut. In a crowded place, Jack shouted he has his son in his language and got Suleiman's attention. Jack gives a warning shot and everyone ducks while Suleiman runs away, but it gave Jack the opportunity to end Suleiman. Jack retrieves the phone and ends the crisis. James congratulates Jack on finishing the mission and they joke around afterwards. The next day, Jack brings Samir to Hannon and they reunite with each other. 4 months later in Morocco, we see Mattis on a mission and he hears someone coming in. That person was Ibrahim and he gets suspicious, but Mattis ends him on the spot. At the CIA headquarters, James packs up his things to go to Moscow to be the deputy of chief of station there, and Jack congratulates him. Later, Jack is called to Nate's office so he can be promoted to James's position. Before James left, he left Jack a plane ticket to Moscow. Well, that ends it for Jack Ryan Season 1. If you want Season 2, comment Moscow. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe, and thanks for watching.